Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is our fifth recording. In this recording, we are going to resume communication station scenarios, and as I promised earlier, that we are going to discuss ethical scenarios with some other miscellaneous. So, ethics in our practice, it's controlling our profession, and it has different types to practice. So we have ethics among each others, so between the physician and his colleagues, his juniors, and his students, and there are ethics which is controlling our profession also with patients, and ethics controlling our relation with parents or relatives. For relatives, we have those scenarios which is concerned with the child abuse, and how can you deal in such kind of difficult scenarios. We have, for example, for ethics controlling our relationship with patients, like withdrawal of support, withholding of support, and consent for certain procedures of surgery, and all things related to ethics are controlled by what's called medical ethical framework. We are going to discuss, as it's very famous to be in exam as education station, but you have to be aware about it. And finally, we have ethics, which is controlling our relationship between others, between colleagues and others. And there are also very common scenario we are going to give as example. Okay. So for child abuse, it's difficult, and actually we are making it difficult if we are not going to follow the steps. So sometimes we try to be the judge, and we act as detectives. So we want to know who inflicted this harm to the baby, and we think about how bad is mother, and we may even be more rough with her, which is not supposed to happen, because you are caring about the kid, and your main concern is to protect the kid, and all things related to who inflicted this is not our responsibility. You can refer to social services, you can refer to even the authorities, but it's not your role as physician to try to investigate for who inflicted this, or to accuse somebody with such guilt. So in child abuse, there will be some clues in the scenario which will raise your suspicions about child abuse. So you have to refer to nice guidelines. There's good guidance for child maltreatment, and you will find the different types of child maltreatment. Physical abuse, we have neglect, we have sexual abuse. So you have to be aware about the different types and when to suspect. So there are some indicators which can give you clue that this patient is abused from the history. If the story is not explaining the injury, or it's confusing, you cannot relate it with the findings you are examining. And also, if there are some factors which raise suspicion of abuse, like separated mother, single mother, divorced mother, some financial problems, handicapped child, or drunken father, alcoholic father, or this child is listed in child protection list. So all these are factors which you should take in consideration, added to the scenario that this baby maybe was exposed to child abuse. And the injury itself. Okay, so if we have like well-defined multiple circular burns, so it's for sure you have to suspect such kind of lesions. Maybe this is cigarette burns. Okay, if you have like well demarcated line with redness below it, like in the heels, for example, so it's indicator that there's immersion in hot water. Okay, if we have bites, so we have teeth print impression on the body, so this patient is exposed to bite. Okay, especially that the story is not explaining that. We have different examples. Okay, if I have like a well-defined straight impression, okay, on the back, for example, so this patient was also having an impression that maybe somebody inflicted harm to him, or by stick, or by whatever used. So based on the lesion, we can suspect child abuse. So we take in consideration the history given. If the baby is candidate for abuse, like handicapped, immobile, mentally retarded child, or having problems, psychological ADH, not a child as we can say, and the lesion itself. So I have to consider all these factors. So based on that, you are going to suspect. The most important thing is that you are not going to accuse the mother or anybody. So you will say politely and honestly that we found some lesions, okay, which may raise suspicion that baby is in danger, okay, or he's exposed to harm, and we should admit. So this is the second thing you have to mention, that if you have suspicion of child abuse, you have to admit the child to ensure that if the environment is not safe, so it's better to put him in a safe environment to exclude the risk inflicted on him. So we say quietly, after examination we found some lesions which may raise suspicion that maybe he's exposed to a certain type, or not exposed, we can say there's some like he's in danger, or maybe the environment is not safe to him, and we have to do our workup for that. Then the expected question she will say, so you think that I'm not taking care of my kid? You think that you are accusing me? I'm a good mother. I don't accept this insult. So we'll tell her, yes, I'm not accusing you. Uh, uh, I'm caring about the kid, and this is my first priority. So that's why we are going to admit, we are going to do the full workup to exclude the possible causes for these lesions. Okay, and as I mentioned, this type of lesions, I'm afraid that it may not be like because of medical cause, and we should ensure that he's in a safe environment. So maybe he was exposed to a certain harm or unknown harm. And as you remember that you are not going to take history because you are not allowed to. So in such case, don't start to ask, is there anybody else taking care of him? Maybe that will be good in case of history taking, but in communication scenario, it's not expected from you that you are going to ask her. So I'm afraid that maybe he's maybe he's at home, maybe you didn't witness this, you didn't notice this. But now the priority is to admit him, and this is for his sake. Okay. Then whether she will say, okay, for sure, I'm caring for him, and I don't mind at all, or she will insist on her refusal, and she will say, no, I think he's okay, he does not have any problem, I'm able to take care of him, and I have to take him home. In such case, you will try again to convince her that we have to exclude any causes for this lesion. So you have to admit we are going to offer him the good care needed in hospital, and we are going to do workup, and you have to be aware about what workup. So if you have a patient who's expected to have child abuse, skeletal survey after the full general examination is mandatory. Okay, examination of the fundus of both eyes is very important, and sometimes up to brain imaging in case of advanced cases. Then, if she insisted, you can ask your senior to sit with her, and you will say that I think it's better for the sake of the kid to sit with the senior, and he will be able to explain to you why we want to admit and to do our management. Or in case still she's insisting, you can call the social services, okay, and refer to social services to come and sit with the mother. And if she's still insisting, okay, in such case, after even social services involved, and you insisted that she should stay, and social services to be informed about that. So in such case, maybe police should be informed, especially if you are sure about increased suspicions of child maltreatment. So police is not the first option, and you should consider that, okay? And usually we are not calling the police unless we are sure about child abuse, and after social services are involved, they will contact the authorities by themselves. But we are talking about in case of refusal, and you think that this baby is in danger in case he's going back home. So the main important things that I have to exclude any medical causes explaining these lesions, I have very good suspicion of child abuse, okay, in the form of the history, the patient and parents themselves, and the lesions. And by the way, if case of suspicion of sexual abuse, you are not going to speak to the mother like this. Police should be involved from the beginning. And the sequence of implementation of systems involved in this scenario. So the first thing, you are going to try, then your senior social services and the police. So we mentioned the service step, what type of investigations. So the aim is to admit, to do the full screening, to exclude expected cause. So if I have bruises, okay, it can be because of medical causes, like patient having hemophilia or patient having thrombocytopenia. So I have to do CBC coagulation, okay, skeletal survey, examination of the fundus, and these are the main lines of diagnosis. And admission is mandatory, as I mentioned. And finally, you will conclude and summarize your meeting. You will thank her, and you will tell her that we are going to update you about the results of investigations, and based on that we'll decide for how long we are going to keep them in the hospital. And as I mentioned, never try to accuse parents, or don't assume that who inflicted this. Okay, this is not your job at all. Okay, this is for child abuse scenarios. For some scenarios related to our environment of work, okay, our profession, controlling our relationship with our colleagues. So we have very common scenario for house officer, okay, who was supposed to write discharge summaries for patients, and nurse told you that discharge process is delayed, and parents are complaining because it take too much time from the house officer to write the discharge summaries, and a lot of pending discharge summaries are there, and you are asked to speak to this colleague regarding this. Okay, so again, this is your colleague, maybe he's junior to you, but if you think about the scenario, maybe some of us will think about how I'm going to be tough, and how I'm going to think about punishment, and I have to take aggressive action regarding that. But this is not the rule. His colleague, junior, so he deserves advice. It's advice. So first, you will greet him, okay, and then not expected in this scenario to introduce yourself, okay, because he's not you. So you can show the examiner that you understand that by telling, okay, how are you, Ahmed? We are sitting together most of the time, spending a lot of time together, and maybe we didn't have this chat before. Okay, so that will show the examiner that you understand very well. But if you are pragmatic and you just say, okay, I'm Dr. Ahmed, one of the team working here in the ward, so he's expected to be a colleague, and we should be familiar to him. Or you can say in a different way, I think you know me, Ahmed, and I think you know me, Muhammad, whatever the name. We are working together. So you just show the examiner that you understand what's colleague. And then you can ask opening questions. Okay. So you can say, do you have any problems with work here? Or you can even start in a better introduction, like, Mahmoud, I noticed that you are really interested in pediatrics, and I noticed that you attend the rounds with us, and I really like this attitude, but do you have any problems so far in our practice, or in pediatrics specifically? And then you are expecting, because you have to gain his trust, to let him tell what's in his mind, okay? So he has to trust you, he has to trust you. So he will say, okay, I'm really interested in pediatrics, I try to even stay for even off work hours, but I'm facing problems with the discharge summons. Okay? If he didn't open the subject, you can even tell him what do you think about the importance of discharge summons in all practice. Then we'll have instructions to say, good that you raised this point, or you raised this issue. Actually, I feel I am very disappointed, because I think that I'm doing too much paperwork, and I don't like this. I don't think medicine is like that. We should practice medicine, not to just write. We are not writers here. I waste my time in writing this nonsense. So if he said like that, so we should raise the importance of documentation. So we can say, okay, Muhammad, I understand your disappointment, but let's assume that this patient, we noticed yesterday that he came from another hospital with good transfer summary, and that helped us to assume him medications, and that also helped us to know that he's having allergy to a certain medication. So what do you think if we don't know all this, and this patient was given a drug which he is allergic to, and then we suffer in controlling anaphylaxis like that? Or let's say, added to this point, like allergy, this patient, for example, he's planned for a continuation of certain medication for 2 weeks more or 3 weeks more. So if he's not discharged with something which is explaining why this patient needs this medication, maybe any doctor can stop it. Okay. Another thing, that writing the documentation for this patient, it has a good educational value in our practice. Do you think why? So that will help. You have to be interactive with him as well. It's advice, but it has to be interactive. So he will say, how? I don't think that can be helpful. It's really tiring to write all the story from admission to discharge. Then you will tell him, you are having a journey through the full admission of the baby. So you know when he was admitted, what was the condition, and what medication he received, and what investigations we have done, and they help us to reach the diagnosis. and based on that he received the proper medication, and then he improved and he was discharged home. So it's a real story for a success of treatment, okay, based on a good diagnosis, based on a good investigation, okay, done for this baby. This is better than reading in textbooks. So I think for me, all of us were juniors before, and we passed through this experience. It's really helpful, it's educational. So I think this point has to be clear, okay? And you have to be very quiet and calm while you are giving this information or this advice to the colleague. Then also you have to show him your interest to listen to his complaint. Maybe he has some right, okay? So, but you can tell him, can you tell me what are your recommendations to improve this? If you don't agree with me that okay, it's important, but you think it's taking too much time, what are your recommendations? I don't mind to help you, by the way. If you think that you are loaded with a lot of bending discharge, I don't mind to help you. Okay, you have to show him how also cooperative and familiar to him, and listen to him. Then he will say, for example, okay, I don't think that we have a good time, sufficient time to examine patients. The all working hours we are spending in writing this documentation. Then you will try to find solutions. Okay, we'll try to tell him that even you can share us in our round, and then we can, as I mentioned, we can share this pending discharge. I can help you, and you have to also let him be more involved in the practical practice as he has right. Okay, then you will thank him and you will offer any that anytime he can contact you, and if he has any questions, you will be very happy to answer, and you can also guide him to some websites or provide him with some materials indicating the importance of documentation. Okay, this is patient right, and also it's helpful, as I mentioned, because it has educational impact. I think this is a very common scenario, and I think if we follow this way, it will be really impressive to the examiner. Okay, so the last thing is some scenarios which is controlling our practice with patients. Okay, there is very common scenario for and it's also written in MRCPCH, and even in last exam in Oman, I think this was the same scenario. So regarding like 12-year-old female was recently diagnosed to have leukemia. Okay, and mother knew. She wants you not to tell her. Okay, and one of the students attend this breaking bad news, and they requested the mother not to tell her, and she's inquiring. She thinks that this girl has the full right to know her disease, and she has the full right to accept or to refuse. So you have to discuss with this student why mother she has a point not to tell, and when we can tell this girl, okay, and is it true to tell or not, okay. This is very important. And what are the sequences if we told or if we didn't, okay, what's the best for the girl? So you have to know about the medical ethical framework, and you have to know some titles. It's very important to know what's autonomy and what are the factors which we can say against autonomy, okay. Autonomy means I have the full right to decide to be treated by what and by whom and how, okay. So it's all about me, and this is like just the definition which we can understand. And there's some other titles. There are four, okay, four components of medical ethical framework. Then we have non-maleficence, okay, means doing no harm, okay. And then we have beneficence, which is doing benefit, okay. And last one is justice, okay. So in our practice we should think about the step we are taking. Is it going to harm or not? Not only that, is it going to benefit or not? Okay, and justice, this is individual identity, means all people have the right to receive equal treatment according to their problem or their disease. So it's clear now. We are going to discuss these four parameters. We have to know what's against autonomy, like mental retardation, like underage, which is under 18, okay. And we know that from 16 to 18 they have the right to agree for treatment, so we should tell them, but they don't have the right to refuse treatment. And we have to know what's GLIC scoring, so we check the GLIC the level of awareness and understanding of the adolescent, okay, which is usually expected to check that after the age of 12, okay. And this scenario, it's all about how to say that there is no wrong and no full right in this example. If mother is insisting not, maybe she has the right that she think if her girl knew that she's having leukemia, she may refuse treatment, so that will harm her. So we are insisting not to do harm. And while, for example, if she knows her disease, maybe she will be keen to continue in treatment. So it depends on the mother. Mother knows her much better than us, okay. So if she thinks that she knows that she's having leukemia and she will not accept for admission in the hospital for receiving treatment, so it's better not to tell. She has point, okay. And so on. You can give examples. It's a very common scenario, and I think the example in MRCPCH is enough, and you can refer back to the book. So in this recording we discussed ethics and some miscellaneous. We talk about child abuse, okay, and as I mentioned, some steps we have to fulfill in child abuse, and we have some points to stress on. The most important thing is not to accuse. Second thing is to admit, okay. Third thing, in case parents refused admission, what shall we do? And what are we going to do? And from the beginning, as we know, what are the factors which raise suspicion of child abuse? And then we have discussed the ethical aspects of our relation among each others, and we took example for the house officer who is refusing documentation or the short summary documentation, and finally we took example for the very common scenario of the medical ethical framework. I hope that this recording is beneficial, and by this recording we finished communication station scenarios. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to receive and to answer. Thank you for your listening, and waiting for your feedbacks. Thank you and goodbye.